Okay, well, welcome to Future Vision. Today I'm talking to Marilyn Devonish, who you might well know as a trainer. She teaches amazing stuff. Follow Marilyn anyway. She's good for your soul. She will teach you things. She will brighten your day and make you feel so confident. And she does a lot of stuff with the mind. Anyway, the reason why I've asked Marilyn on here, she put up a post recently about cashless society, or watching cash disappear, which we're all seeing. Shops that usually take it on, they're saying, oh well, the banks have all gone in the high streets and we got nowhere to pay it in. And it's always bothered me, and I was just saying to Marilyn, it was about 20 years ago I started with my mind traveling to the future. There's no money in the future, and I couldn't quite understand how we function without cash. I couldn't quite, obviously got all the internet banking, but I couldn't quite work it out. So anyway, Marilyn started this campaign, which I find unusual. I've seen Marilyn set up a campaign for people to sign before. So Marilyn, I just wanted to invite you on and ask you why you started that campaign.
Well, Anne, it's really interesting that you started telling me the story a few minutes ago. And the reason I said we better hit record, because I've had that before in an interview. We start just with the backstory and then say, oh, we should have recorded that. So I definitely want to hear more about that backstory. But it's really strange that I started having that conversation just over 20 years ago as well. Now, it was because of something that happened with a client. So if you want, I'll start there in terms of how this conversation all came about. So I had somebody contact me. They wanted to do a breakthrough session. As Anne said, I'm a coach and therapist. I've been doing that now since October 2000. And she asked, do I take cash? I said, yes. A bit later on, she asked again. Now, this was just in an intro call. And by the end of that call, she'd asked me about half a dozen times. Once or twice, I get it, but I was like, wow, that's really strange. She's asked me so many times. So I thought, now I'm curious. So when she actually came, it then became apparent why she was asking. She was in an abusive relationship and had previously tried to get away. And what happened was her husband or partner had managed to track her down because she had to pay a couple of things. We're back in those days, a check. And credit card. So she had gotten away, waited for him to go to work. She knew he was going to be on a job, so she had all her stuff ready to go, took herself halfway across the country, breathed a sigh of relief. And then a few weeks later, the bank statements arrived. So he calls the bank and said, I think there's been fraud on this account. There are some transactions I don't recognize. The bank, being helpful, then said, oh, well, that's a such and such hotel in, told him where, and that's a cafe, restaurant, da 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 da. So yeah, I remember we were there, styled it out, as we used to say, and then started then to figure out, okay, where can I go now? Very cunning. So he turns up at the coffee shop, the cafe that was on there, with a brown envelope, and he says, my partner is here to do some work and present a really important talk. She's taken the wrong copy of the presentation. Now, in these days, there's no scanning and Dropbox. You had acetates and OHPs and handouts. So he's all concerned. The woman says, oh yeah, she comes here most days, and just having a really friendly chat. She's staying at us, so she confirms everything. Oh, what time did she come? Oh, around about 11, whatever it was, she said. And he's, so if you see her, don't tell her. I want to surprise her as well. She doesn't know I'm here. I think it'll be, nice to get away. Spun all this story, which seemed very plausible. Finds out which hotel she's at, manages to find out the room number, knocks on the hotel room door. She says, who is it? Maintenance. She says, I didn't call anyone. Now, he's wearing a baseball cap, so his head is down. So she looks through the peephole and she can see the cap, blue cap, blue shirt, looked like a maintenance man. Why would you be suspicious? Well, you would be now. I'm telling you the story. So opens the door and he bursts in with a knife. So that was her experience. So what she was then doing after that, and I said, well, one of the things I would say, a big thing, is to make sure. Now, back in those days, they called it pin money. He wouldn't let her work, but she'd get pin money. And I said, if I were you, I would start saving that and making sure you've got a little stack. And only if you ever decide to make that decision again, only go to places that take cash. because of course there's no way, even if he can get hold of the statements, there's no way he can tell where she is. And I've had that I've lost count of the number of times I've had that conversation over the last 21, nearly 22 years. Very, very common scenario. That scenario quite dramatic, but I've had women say, there's one who whenever she used to leave, I'd say, oh, remember the coffee? She gets some, I make her a coffee, we let it cool, does a bit of a gargle, doesn't really drink it, and then off she goes. Why? Because she told her partner she's with the girls for a coffee.
Right.
And because of course she could pay cash, all that sort of thing. So whenever they wanted to do something, one of them wanted to do belly dancing classes, her partner would have ridiculed her. So she'd pay cash for those. And there was one, whenever she wanted to do something on her own, she would say she had women's problems down there and she was going to see her gynecologist. Now, of course, he's not going to follow her there. So that's where she'd meet up with the girls, go out for a little drink, etc., all of it. And there was one who it was getting increasingly challenging, and she had to almost drop her friends because they all like to pay cash, pay card. She was always the one who wanted to pay cash, and let's do a check, let's do this, let's do card. And so they got to the point, sometimes she would be saying, oh, I've left my card at home, or oh, I've run out of checks. There's only so many times you can use that sort of ruse. So for some, it was getting difficult because they didn't want to say what was going on at home. But with every story that was shared with me, the crux of the matter was the same. The minute they started using their checks and their credit cards, partner was able to then track exactly what they were doing. And it would always like be at school. What's this? What's that? Why are you here? Why are you there? And many of the times they didn't want them seeing their friends. They wanted to isolate them. And so whenever they wanted to do something like that, they had to make sure that they paid in cash. So that's where the conversation started for me. And what I've seen in the last few months, even the last few weeks, because it's really accelerating fast. Increasingly, I had a situation back in May. We're now in, for people watching this in real time, it's July. Sorry, it's just turned August. It's now the 3rd of August. So back in May, I was traveling to Oxford. Had some cash in my purse, I was in Paddington Station, machines right at the top. I'm pointing that way because that's where the machines were in relation to coming out of the tube. So I've got my cash and I'm like, I can't see where to put my cash. And there was a slot that sort of looked like a cash slot. So I bend down because I was trying to put the money in. It's like, oh no, actually it's something that pulls out rather than. So in the end, I gave up. I went back to the information desk and I said, that bank of machines up there, do they take cash? She went, no. I was like, okay. So now I said, well, how would someone pay cash? She went, oh, and there was a woman walking around with a sort of little machine. She says, oh, you can speak to one of them. Now, if you're in a hurry, you wouldn't know all of that. So anyway, I actually missed my train as a result of that. So then I thought, let me just see how quickly this shows up on my statement. So I put my card in to buy the ticket. Within like 30 seconds, London Paddington is on the statement. I then get onto the train that same day. A woman who sounded Eastern European struggles on with this massive suitcase. I'm like, wow, we used to travel with those suitcases back to the Caribbean. You could get 3 people in there. So she's struggling with this suitcase. A man helps her put it on the shelf. About half an hour into the journey, the trolley comes past selling refreshments. She's sitting 2 rows in front of me. And she says, oh, water, please, water. And the woman says, water, yeah. She gets out her money, and the woman sort of does the thing that all of the shops are starting to do now. She rails back as though she'd been offered some sort of fire. And said, oh, we can't take cash. No, what she wanted was a bottle of water. So once I clock what's going on, I start rummaging my bag. I thought, well, I'll buy the water for her. But the guy who helped her with the suitcase, he was diagonally opposite. He clocked what was going on as well. So he called the woman back and says, I'll pay for that on my card. It's not often you're going to get people who are that kind.
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because you've got that. Sometimes you don't want people to be able to trace you and track what you're doing. And I've seen this for a whole range of things. I don't like the way, I say store cards are monitoring. They know everything you buy. They say they don't keep track of it. You buy cat food, you always get the little thing pop out to take away. It says get your cat insurance here. You know, it's this constant monitoring is worrying. And the other one I've had, it hits people that are struggling in life. So I've know several people that their life was rock bottom, that they were on the streets. They can't get a bank account. If you haven't got an address, you can't get a bank account. They've had the worst time of their life. And sometimes life just, you can be ill or have a mental health problem, or you can just have life go wrong. And you can't get a bank account. So what do you do if you can't use cash? If you haven't got a card, sometimes, and people I'm talking about have massively turned their life around since, but at that stage in their life, I've known women suddenly be widowed, or suddenly they've died, or people have had a terrible illness, or had one guy, very successful man, his daughter died, and he had about 5 years when he just wasn't functioning, lost everything, went bankrupt, everything. He had no access to anything, but at least having that bit of cash, he could function. And once you've had people taking over your bank account, identity theft, this is happening far more than we realize. So what do you do then? So yeah, it bothers me a lot, because I think cash, as you say, I've grew up with, if you've got 50 quid in your back pocket, you know, at least you can get a taxi, get some food, you can do this, you can do that. Without that, and you're relying on the card, the day the card doesn't work, what do you do? What do you do if you haven't got other resources?
And it's funny you should say that. I don't think I've ever told you this, when I did your FLP practitioner course many years ago now, I came back from that on, because it was the week, you know, over the weekend. So I think it was either the Tuesday or the Wednesday. I'm in the shower and I hear the phone ringing. So we're at the shower, get out, pick up the phone. It's my bank saying, "Is that Mr. Yeah?" They said, "Are you in?" I think it was either Tesco's or Sainsbury's, and they said some place. And I was like, "No, I'm standing in my towel in Watford. Why do you ask?"
Yeah.
And they said, "Your card has just been used to make a couple of small purchases. We want to verify your location." So I said, "I can verify." And they said, "Do you have your card with you?" I said, "Yeah." "Has it left your possession?" "Absolutely not." And so it turns out so before I let them go, I then said, "Can you just tell me, given that my card has been in my possession, no one else has had the card?" And they said, "Did you tell anyone the PIN?" "No, I didn't." I said, "How did this happen?" She says, "Well, there's one of two ways it probably happened." She said, "Have you been anywhere lately?" I said, "Well, actually, I was in Windsor. I was doing a course at the weekend." She went, "Oh, that'll probably be it then." What she said to me was, she said, either there was a false fascia on the whole cash machine at one of the places that I was, where they put what they do. I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "They put a thing over it. So it looks like the cash machine, but in the dead of night, they come and lift the whole thing off, and it's recorded every card and every keystroke." She said, "Or what's happened is you were maybe in a smaller establishment, you paid by card, and they had a dummy machine, which, you know, goes through all the motions. You put your card in, it registers all the details, you put your PIN in, it links those details as well, and then they make a sort of a blank card. They know the PIN, and they usually start with a set amount. They do it 2 or 3 times just to make sure they can get away with it, and then they're off." So that happened as a result of going on when I was away on your course. Wow. And again, I was several days without the card, because now you've got to wait. But it's not even that, Anne. There are times where, for many people who recognize the scenario, there's more month than money. So you're waiting for payday, you've got that gap where you can't put anything on your card because there's nothing on it. But you've got your bit of cash that's going to see you through. Or you've been using your cash because you want a budget. So there are so many scenarios, but the one that really concerned me was the women and the safety and that. But like you said, there are so many ways it can spiral.
So many ways it can. And when you're trying to be anonymous, and sometimes in life you do need to escape. I know a young lady right now that's left the area completely, because something horrendous happened with her partner. So she's left family, friends, her children have been uprooted from their school. You don't do that lightly. You don't do that easily. And nobody wants her to be traced, because the guy, I don't know what he did, but I need to catch up with the family. They're going to tell me more. But it must have been horrendous. Therefore, people who do horrendous things, you don't want them finding you. You don't want it to be traced and tracked. So I think there's a lot of reasons why it bothered. This is just a niggle, and I don't get involved. I don't listen to any conspiracy theories. I don't listen to any of it. I don't listen to the videos people send me. This is just my own niggle. The other thing is, if somebody had predicted this, I wouldn't have believed it. But the Canadian lorry drivers, when they were protesting against the government, their bank accounts were frozen. Their bank accounts were frozen. So imagine that in the future, if you have no cash and you don't agree with something that's happening, and everything's frozen, you can't pay your bills, you can't buy food. That is terrifying. And that actually happened. People did get their bank accounts frozen. I mean, I have a job to get my head around that could be possible. So imagine if something like that could have happened, say in the Second World War, Jewish people. Imagine that. If you speak out against genocide anywhere in the world, everything's frozen. You can't feed your kids. You can't pay your bill. The implications of that is really, really scary. And people using cryptocurrency as an alternate, which is amazing. But overnight, it plummeted. If anybody's got any ideas why, put it in the comments, because I've got no idea why cryptocurrency overnight just literally plummeted. I had a friend that wanted to put 200 grand into crypto. He had an award, and I just said, put it into property, buy property, don't put it into crypto. You put every penny into crypto, you're gonna see. Money is weird at the moment. Money is weird, and in the future, I just don't see any. I just don't see any cash. Everything's going to be more tokens, or just this is how many tokens you're awarded, and so that is how much you've got to buy food or whatever, and everything's online, and I feel uncomfortable with it. I like money. I like my purse, and I like money. I like the feel of money, and yeah, but it bothers me. So you actually put a campaign together, didn't you? You had is that still going? You still
yeah,
doing this?
it's one of those things, like you said, it's very unusual. I'm always talking about stuff and sharing, and hey, I'm thinking about this, or I see this coming, etc. You know, in November 2020, so before the vaccine was released, I put a post on Facebook saying no vaccine, no travel. Everybody laughed and went, don't be so stupid. We know what happened there. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So oftentimes I go, I can see where this is going. And I'll say it, people will laugh and go, well, that will never happen. And then lo and behold, it happens. I'm like, oh, how did that happen? People, surprise, surprise. But with this one, I'm like, now I've known of this for 20 years. I've been over 20 years. I've been advising clients to do the thing where get your little nest egg together, make sure you've got something, a cushion, that if you need to get out, if you need to, disappear somewhere, get away. And the reason I'm saying women is because it's women who are speaking to me. I am under no illusion that men can also be in abusive relationships, because I know there's always going to be somebody that comes on and goes, well, what about men? I'm like, I hear you. It just so happens it was the women I was talking to. But with this one, I'm like, well, I could just keep, like you said, I could say a few, like there was a thing when I went to Marks and Spencer's last week. I had 3 items. I've been out jogging, had some cash shoved in a little side pocket, and I thought, I need some gravy powder. What was it? Gravy powder, quinoa, and one other item it was. So I'm standing in where all the bank of the pay as you go, and I'm like, self-service, and I'm looking around. The woman comes, she said, all right, madam. I said, I can't tell which machines take cash, because I knew they kept reducing it. She went, oh, none of them take cash. So then I had to go and queue at the massive queue where everybody's got a great big shopping trolley. So of course I came back and had a little bit of a rant about that on Facebook, and I tagged Marks and Spencer's in. Now, to their credit, Elsa from customer service at Marks and Spencer's came back pretty quickly and says, thank you, Ms. Devonish, for highlighting this. I've spoken to the manager at the store in Watford. There's been a technical issue, but they are going to set a couple of the machines up to take cash. Great.
Good.
But it's like you said earlier at the start, there are times you can be ranting on Facebook, you'll get something off your chest, a few people, have a good old debate, but then nothing really happens. And I thought, well, somebody should start a petition. I call it my other brain. It's like, well, maybe that somebody could be you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've never started a petition before. I've had passionate discussions about things. And as you said, in terms of earlier on, thinking about government and politics and all that sort of thing. But on this occasion, I thought, well, I've been talking about this behind the scenes for over 20 years. I've been talking about it more openly for the last few years and saying, hey, be careful. Look, this is where I think this is going.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, why not start a petition? So there's a site called 38 Degrees.
Yeah.
Where you can start your own petition. And it was a bit like, oh my God, what if I start a petition and nobody signs it? That was honestly one of the thoughts that I had. It's not my bag. It's not something I do. But I thought, you know what, Marilyn? Just start it anyway.
Yeah.
And if people sign, that's absolutely amazing. And
Mm.
if people don't sign, you at least know that you did something to highlight this issue and say, please think about the vulnerable. And not just that. And where this actually started in a bigger way in terms of the social media conversation, when we had our first hot spell, I think it was in May. We don't get many in the UK. We've got to make the most of them. So I headed to Regent's Park in London. So I've got my beach towel, I'm chilling, I've got my sunglasses on, and I thought, oh, there's the kiosk, the shop. I fancy an ice lolly because I'd had an ice cream on the way. I thought, you know, 2 in 1 day, a little bit much. So I go over, you know, grab my purse, go over to the kiosk, and I bought an ice lolly. Now, before I could say anything, she'd rung it up on the thing as card. So the machine is there. And I thought, all right then. So put it on my card. As I turned to leave, I saw they had some bananas. And I thought, oh, I fancy a banana. I said, how much are your bananas? She said 50p. Now, we've had a big discussion about the fact I could get a bunch of bananas for 50p. I was a captive audience. Just live with it, deal with it, is what it is. So I put my hands in my pocket, hand her 50p. She had exactly the same reaction as everybody's been having. Oh, she rails back as though she's Superman and I've thrust kryptonite in her face. And says, oh, we're not allowed, we can't take cash. I said, it's 50p, I just want a banana. But now I'm thinking, hold on a minute, this is the shop in Regent's Park where kids play. Are you what? And then somebody had said to me, well, they can get a smartwatch or they can get a prepaid debit card. I'm like, look, in the pandemic, it became very clear when everybody was doing homeschooling, there are a lot of families that did not have devices, didn't have PCs, some did not have access to Wi-Fi. Are you really telling me that all of the kids now have got money for a smartwatch?
Ridiculous, so expensive. Especially now with the cost of living going up. Do you know, I think the kids are growing up, they will not know cash, they will not understand it, it'll all be sat on a card. There's something about cash where you are more aware of what you spend. I think the next step will be universal basic income. I think that is gonna, well, I know it's gonna happen. We will have a universe, so everyone will get so much to live on. If they go and work on top of that, fine. And that will be, once we have, and people will welcome it. I mean, I hate it when people's life takes a tumble and they're means tested or they've got council officials spying on them. I know people have had, 3 of my friends were widowed young, very young, left with children. 3 of my male friends were widowed really young, in their early 30s, and left with children to bring up. So my friends have really had some tough stuff to deal with. And they go up there, they're absolutely devastated by this bereavement. They've got devastated children. They go up to the, wherever it is, benefits, and they got these people talking down to them and sneering at them and going, well, and really giving them a hard time. And then spying on them. They'll actually say things like, oh, is that men's trousers on your washing line? Some of the things that have happened, oh yes, actually spied on them. I don't know if that still happens today, but certainly in the past. So sometimes there's something about universal basic income. Everybody gets paid. Our elderly, our elderly aren't going to manage this winter. They're just not. It's horrible. They get so little compared to the rest of Europe, and they're the people that have built the country, have worked hard all their lives. And I think universal basic income, everybody will have a certain amount that will pay their bills, buy them food, blah blah blah. Give them a certain amount, but with that it will be going straight into the bank. That'll be the beginning of no cash. That will be the beginning of no cash. And I understand shops and cafes now, because they're saying, well, you know, all the banks are closed. All the banks are closed. But it's almost, to me, over the years, I've watched how we're almost kept at home so much, you know, no point in going shopping. The parking, say if I just look at Maidenhead, the cost of parking is huge. So people aren't going to go there so often. The rates, shops can't afford rate. If they gave free parking or very cheap parking and made the rates a third of the price, the high streets would be buzzing. You know, it change it. Shops would be able to afford to be there. They don't need to charge these rents. So it's all seemed to be part of something where you're going to shop at home, you're going to stay at home, you're not going to leave your house, you're not going to go anywhere, and you're not going to have cash, because cash is freedom. Cash gives you a certain amount of freedom. And it's freedom to also, you know, pay the local gardener or whatever. You know, you have more control over your money when you have cash. And I see it as a loss of a certain freedom. Everything then is monitored. Everything you spend can be analysed, broken down, monitored, or disagreed with. You know, disagreed with or withheld. So it's a funny old thing. And I'm glad you put that petition together. And I'd love you. I'm putting this on YouTube and putting it on other places. I'd love you to put a link at the bottom to that, because this is like, it niggles me. It niggles me that cash is getting harder and harder to use, and it is part of I think it gives us freedom.
And I'll be honest with you, because you're describing, I remember God, I don't know, when was it? I think it was around 2009 or thereabouts, where went from having a full pipeline with the management consultancy stuff I was doing to zero, because that was the beginning of the recession. I was working in central and local government. All training was basically cut. I was in the room running a training course. Someone from the chief exec office knocks on the door in the middle and says, "I'm so sorry to disturb the course. Can I just have a word with Marilyn for a moment?" I said, "No problem." So I said to the group, "Anyway, carry on with the exercise. I'll be back in a moment." Went outside the door thinking, is this going to be another 9/11 situation? Because I was on site in Walthamstow when that happened. Wow. And somebody came, knocked on the door and says, "Right, there's been an incident in London. We need to keep," no, not on the 9/11, the 7, when it happened to us in the July, a few years later. She said, "You need to keep everyone here, even if they insist on leaving." And then gave me a briefing. So I then had to go back in and break the news to what had happened in London. And we all got to sit tight. You probably can't use your mobile phone because the networks are going to be jammed, So I thought, oh my gosh, there's something going on. She said, "I just wanted to tell you personally, and I'm going to be heading off to a meeting. We just had a directive in. We've got to make some big cuts. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to continue with the training that we have booked for. And we were going to be there for the next 3 or 4 years. I just wanted to tell yourself, so this and the next couple that you've got in, I think there were 3 more that month, those will be the last of the trainings, I'm afraid." Seriously, to talk about being shell-shocked was like, whoa. Yeah. So that weekend, I'm in town, now going, I've got nothing. And somebody comes up to me from shelter with a clipboard and says, "I would love it. Could you set up a direct debit?" And I'm thinking now, well, my direct debits are going to be hitting a blank wall. Yeah. And I said, "Can I just ask you, in terms of the demographic, what sort of people do you get at shelter? Who are you catering for?" Yeah. Rocked me to my core, because like you said earlier, she said, "Oh, these are often professional people. They're even in jobs, or they've just lost a job. And there are often families," and she described, as she was talking, she's describing me. She's describing me in that moment. Yeah. But when people think of shelter, they might think of homeless, vagrant, drinking. They don't want any accommodation, because I know there are people out there who do fit that as well. But I'm like, actually, but seriously, I said to her, "You've rocked my world today." I said, "Unfortunately, I can't commit to signing up to a direct debit because I'm going to be in a bit of a difficult situation myself. And if I'm not very careful, I might become one of the people that you're catering for." But I said, "I really, I love the work that you're doing. If I can make a one-off donation, I'll do that. I just can't commit to doing something every single month." Yeah. But as I walked away, I was kind of crying. Yeah. If anybody had seen me, they would have kind of seen the tears. I'm like, oh my God. And I remember seeing something where they said many people are just 1 or 2 months away, potentially, from finding themselves in a really tricky situation, if anything in their life changed. And we've just had 2 years where everything changed for the majority of people, and people who previously wouldn't even know what benefits were and how to claim, and now finding that they're now having to move into that space.
Yeah.
And food banks, again,
Yeah.
banks, many of them struggling to keep up,
Yeah.
because people who had never even dreamed of needing a food bank, suddenly that's the thing they're now relying on to feed their family. And that was even before gas and electricity went through the roof. And like you said, winter, not just for the elderly. I know people who are younger than me, or in the same demographic as you and I, who are worried about winter, because they already struggle to keep their house warm in winter. This year, they're actually saying, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I had log burner put in and bought a big pile of logs, like a load last year. I just said, I've got a feeling we're going to need these. And it's the craziness. And I love what you said about having that nest egg. It's so easy. The example is always your daily coffee or whatever, but to cut back on something, stick that money somewhere and build a nest egg. That's something I did when my kids were little. We lived a bit of a precarious life back in the day, just how it was back then. None of us had much money, but I had this little bank account, and I did some writing for local newspapers. And whenever I got paid, I'd put the money in there. It's my secret account. Excuse the language here. I said to the postmaster one day, he said, I gave that bit of money, and it was a little check from the local newspaper. It was only little. I was only getting paid a small amount per line. I said, that's my fuck off money. And he went, you'd be surprised at how many women have got a fuck off account at this post office. and it's that thing. If I ever needed to disappear, I wasn't in a dangerous situation, I think some people are. But if ever there's an emergency, or I need to go somewhere, or I need to get somewhere, or I need to disappear, that is my little bit of money. And I think everybody does need that, and have a little bit of it in cash. Hide it somewhere, not under your mattress, somewhere very, very clever, and have a bit of cash. And cash isn't about tax avoidance. We should pay our taxes. It is important. You live within the laws of your country, pay your taxes. It's not about that. It's about having control over your life. And if everything, all your bank accounts, identity theft, your card, everything got taken over, which has happened to people. Or I've known people with their businesses, somebody's made a false complaint about them. It's come in, they've had an audit, everything's been frozen. They can't access anything. People have had their business PayPal accounts suddenly frozen. They don't know why. So we never really know why these things happen. If you've got a little bit of money stashed away, at least you know you can buy food. At least you know you can travel. Have some money, and I think have the account. I think you're right. Have a little account, get a little nest egg, and have some cash. Put it somewhere very, very safe. And it's precaution. I think we need to be cautious these days. I think we need to look after ourselves, look after each other.
Absolutely. And for me, I think the permit is one of those things. The speed it's going, I'm like, wow, this is quick. But I know these things don't just happen out of the blue.
No.
There's some infrastructure and plan that sits behind that. But I'm like, it's happening so fast, where almost every day somewhere being turned away from somewhere else, and I'm like, wow, I can't be the only one who's seeing the implications of this for the more vulnerable in society. I can't be. And somebody said, well, they'll just need, and I said, well, there's not just, like you said, if you're not a fixed abode, or you haven't been working for very long, or your credit isn't great, you can't just walk into any old bank and go, open me an account, good man. You just can't. And somebody says, well, if the women are vulnerable, they just need to get a new phone. I'm like, when your head is in that space and you're in survival mode,
and you've got to have money to get the phone.
You've got to have money to get you. It's just, and then if you use your card to get the money to get the phone, that's going to appear within seconds. And they say, well, they should just change it. I'm like, you're not listening to me. No. If they're in that kind of relationship, I've met people who've had spyware on their devices. They had no idea it was there. The partners had placed it there. So whatever they were doing, no matter how careful they tried to be, everything was being tracked. If it was digital and online, the only time they could get some respite is when they moved with cash. And I'm guessing there'll be women who would not be alive today had they not had that option.
Absolutely. I love your story you said about the guy tracked the woman, because that shows you how, if somebody is wily, They act very nice. They can get the information. They will find you. It was not far from Watford, actually. It's going back many years. A woman, 2 children, a husband, and every so often he'd get drunk and go crazy, be violent, smash the place up. It'd be awful. Then he'd full of remorse the next day, and they'd carry on. And then one day he did something so horrendous. He actually locked her and the children upstairs room and started a fire. She was somebody came in, put the fire out. He's full of remorse. He's cried and cried and cried. Devastated. She went, "No, I forgive you. It's all fine." About a month later, he came home from work. There wasn't a thing in that house. There wasn't a thing in that house. She'd even taken the sink plugs and the light bulbs. So she meticulously planned this. And that's making a statement when you take the light bulbs. And, you know, he never, ever found her or the children. Wow. He never, ever. And she escaped because she could pay for the removal van. She could pay for the new premises cash. You can't go and rent a place these days with cash. This was a long time ago. But if you got some cash and you can rent somewhere or get a hotel or anything, you can disappear. And that woman needed to disappear. He would, if he'd have found her, he'd have killed her. So.
And Anne, for anyone who's watching who goes, well, it's much more convenient. Of course, I hear you. I'm not saying I've got a card. I do stuff online. As you know, I'm always playing with technology. I love it. And I love choice. I'm saying, please, just keep the option open. Give people a choice. And I know that the post office is saying with some of they're never going to be able to do everything, but I know many of them are going to say they're trying to pick up the slack where banks are closing. But I totally hear that argument. If you're a small business in a little village, your bank has closed. I hear the difficulty. So I know there will be extenuating circumstances, but when I'm in the centre of London, just across from Trafalgar Square, and I go to buy my favourite Itsu dish, and I walk in, pull the money out of my side pocket because I'm just there. I don't want to have my cards and stuff. I'm just there to cheer for the Jubilee. And the woman does the thing where she rails back and goes, "Oh, we're not allowed to take cash." And I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. And you can't tell me in Trafalgar Square you're not going to be able to find a bank. Come on now. So where it's not extenuating circumstances, my request is choice. Give people the freedom of choice. And for those who want to pay everything on their card, Godspeed to you. I don't want to stand in your way. I realize it's convenient. That is the way the world is moving. For those, for whatever reason, who cannot or do not want to, I'm just asking that we have choices. That's all.
I agree. I would actually go a step further and say to people, once a month, use the bank. Just use your bank once a month. Otherwise, the banks are going to go. Use cash, otherwise it will go. It's no good complaining later. Actually use cash. Actually go into the bank, pay a bill once a month. It's inconvenient. You've got to go in, you've got to park, you've got to kind of, you've got to stand in a queue. People are fumbling about. I don't care. Do it once a month. Go into the bank, pay something into the bank, pay a bill. Use cash, because once it's all gone, you've got a lack of control. You've got a big lack of control. So Marilyn, it's been amazing talking to you. I'd love you to put a link in the comments, because I would like people to sign this, and I'd like it to grow, and I'd like people to share this. I really would like people to share it, because I know it bothers other people, but unless we make a bit of a noise, nothing's going to happen unless we get out there, use cash and talk about it, and sign the 38 Degrees campaign by Marilyn. So I'll ask you to take a moment to sign it, and make sure you follow Marilyn as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Anne. I really appreciate it. And yes, for people who want to sign, that would be absolutely amazing. It was at 50 something signatures when I had a look the other day. Would love it to continue, and it would be amazing. Like you said, if this rolls the way it's rolling at the moment, we could get to a point where it's almost too late. We've hit that tipping point. It's too late. So I'd say if it's something that resonates, even if you haven't had that situation yourself, number one, touch wood, we're all very lucky if we haven't had to live that. But for those that are, I'm like, please, let's find a way to give a voice to those people who do not have a voice and would be negatively impacted by the way it's going. So absolutely, I'll put a link in the comments. I'll give you a link to put a link in the description of the YouTube video. It will be absolutely amazing. Yes, if you would sign the petition, and if you if you don't want to sign it, but you resonate with the idea, share it with people who may be willing to sign. That would be absolutely fantastic. And it's always an absolute pleasure to speak to you.
It's been amazing.
Amazing.
We shall talk again. Take care.
Bye.